Hello again. To recap the previous video, uh, we went over talking about your first basic resource, which is yourself. The three most important things that I attempted to cover, hopefully reasonably coherently, were that you need to know yourself, have a clear vision, and then be willing to take action. During this video, we're going to talk about the first one, which is knowing yourself. I'm going to come at this from a little different angle than probably you're used to, but I think that we need a certain amount of context and perspective to understand ourselves. The first thing, going back to the beginning, so to speak, is that we are composed of star stuff. Every atom that composes our bodies and everything around us that's heavy, that involves atoms that are heavier than hydrogen, was forged in the heart of a star. This was many millions of years ago, but according to some of the more recent findings of the quantum physicists, there is an action at a distance principle, which says that everything that has been in contact at one time is still in contact to some degree. Doesn't matter how far apart they are, doesn't matter how long it's been, they're still in contact. The way that they discovered this principle is that they found that two very small particles that have been in contact at one time, no matter how far they separate them, still change polarity in sync with each other and instantly. So the speed of light is not a barrier. This is sort of a mysterious connection, but it does affirm the principle of action at a distance, and it does support our connection with the stars, since every atom in our body, except the hydrogen, it was formed in the heart of a star, and it has slowly but surely over time accumulated. Now, all these particles were formed many millions, hundreds of millions of years before the first single-celled organism appeared on the planet Earth. Slowly but surely, these things collected, and then we got things like planets and meteors and all that other good stuff. However, in the beginning, as far as we can tell, as far as our physicists can tell, and astronomers, everything sort of expanded into a void. We don't know how void it was, and obviously there was some hydrogen hanging around, but everything more complex than that was formed in the hearts of stars. And the stars basically came into existence by accumulations of hydrogen, to the point where there was enough accumulated in one spot to exert the gravity pressure to ignite the solar furnace, the stellar furnace that makes the star shine and that lets it do its do its work of converting hydrogen and other particles, other atoms that accumulate in it into more complex atomic elements. Okay, so given that piece of information, it doesn't take a great leap of imagination to say that we are the expressions of star stuff, and that perhaps each of us is even connected with an individual star. By analogy, one of the things we notice that also makes this connection a little stronger is that we find among human beings there's sort of a natural stratification or structure based on, well, I mean, we use social ranking and degree of influence and things like that. For the stars, the brightest ones, as any reasonably competent astrologer can tell you, the brightest ones indicate the broadest influence, the most influence, the greatest command of resources, and the greatest personal power. We can see this in the birth situations of all of our most prominent leaders, of the top earners, the top wealthiest people. They have a natural connection to this stuff. Then there are other layers of stars in brightness. They're kind of like the second rank. They're still doing well also, but they're not right, top of the pops. For instance, if you were to try and get some idea of how this would work out, say as an example in a political situation, the first magnitude stars would be the say, for instance, in our American system, would be like the president and his cabinet members. Then the second tier stars might be the Congress, and the third tier maybe the other officials of government, say the justices and the heads of agencies and things like that. And then on down to people who are pretty obscure. The way the astronomers rank the stars is that the brightest ones have the lowest number to represent their magnitude or how bright they are. So the top layer would be the first magnitude folks, the second layer maybe the second and third magnitude stars, and then the fourth, fifth, sixth is about the limit of visibility. So when you get down to sixth magnitude, you can barely see them, and then only under very good atmospheric conditions. And they're, people fall in these categories naturally, so that there's no there's not necessarily any intrinsic moral or qualitative value involved in the person who in persons who occupy these categories. The consideration is how much star power do they have, and there's a natural hierarchy. It falls out that way. However, at the same time, since we are all stars, anyone can, just a minute here. Okay. Basically what I'm saying here is that there's not necessarily any moral connotation connected with your social status or your wealth status or your political power status. That's a matter, if you go back to the analogy of the stars, you'll notice that there's a wide range of colors in stars. Each color is a different part of the spectrum, a different vibration, if you will. And among people, these different colors are seen as tend to correspond to the different characters of people. Now, regardless of how bright your star is, and regardless of what kind of character you have, there are ways and means for you to be all you can be, to let your star shine. That is based on the idea that, okay, we're not, monolithic, singular, homogeneous creatures. We are communities. We are communities psychologically. We are communities biologically, and we are communities spiritually. What integrates the whole thing and puts it together is our star. That's what manages the whole enchilada. And as we can, as is again easily observable, those folks who master themselves, that is, are good managers of those communities, do well and live reasonably productive and fulfilling lives. Those who don't manage their communities well tend, or those who neglect them, tend to see them deteriorate, or to have crises due to the fact that things aren't in the proper balance. They're not working together as they should. Now, no matter how bright or how dim your star, including even the invisible stars, you can still, not still, sorry about that, you can manage those communities to be optimally effective. What this entails is, first of all, learning more about who you are. What are your obstructions? What's not working the way it's supposed to, or the way it should, or at least in harmony with the rest of it. Then you have to apply your will. What do I mean by applying will? I mean you have to cultivate and apply self-discipline, focus, and perseverance. It's like overcoming a bad habit, or learning a new skill, or changing your attitude. These things can be done, but they require some effort, because the natural state of affairs in your psyche or your body, or in terms of your spiritual influences you may or may not be connected, you may be connected with, is out of whack. So the whole idea is, not only are you making a change which leads to an improvement in your life, but you are also bringing things back into balance, or into a better balance. That's the whole rationale, if you will, behind much of the self-development teachings, and behind many of the more, metaphysical kinds of things. But you don't have to be a navel gazer or a crystal sniffer or whatever else you want to consider the New Age types to be, to use this. It's a matter of finding practical ways to apply your will. How do you apply your will? You decide there's where you are now, there's where you want to be. What do you have to do in between to get from point A to point B? The first step in this whole process is deciding that you want to get from point A to point B. Generally, you need a reason for that, which is where we start talking about visions, because your vision is what will sustain you. No matter how difficult things become trying to get from point A to point B. Let's say, well, I'm a smoker, and I'm not really inclined to give it up just yet. But let's say that I decided to quit smoking. Okay. If that decision is firm, and I have a picture, some idea of how my life will be after I quit smoking, like, for instance, being able to taste food better, having food be tastier, being able to smell things more easily and distinguish smells more easily, having more wind, sort of like to dance, take walks, exercise sometimes. And I look at this picture of why do I want to quit smoking? Uh, Aside from the fact that, well, yes, there are, negative health consequences down the road, maybe closer than I'd like to think. And it's costly. It's expensive. There are better things I could do with that money. Okay? Those are the mundane reasons. But what's the picture of where I want to be when I get when I can say I'm so happy to be smoke free? What am I going to have when I get there? That's what's involved in formulating a vision. I can think about. I can picture being able to smell the flowers in the spring more easily. I can picture having more wind, so I can walk further, exercise longer, dance longer, and experience the feeling of what that's like. That's what will keep you going. You'll say, as you go along and you run into obstructions here and there, you'll say, well, if I want to get there, I've got to keep going. You have to be persistent. You have to endure to the end. And you have to remain focused on your goal. What I've just described to you is a way to picture it, to feel it, to make it more real to you so that you will get there. Anybody can do this. Not everybody manages to apply the self-discipline and retain the focus and persevere until they get to where their picture is a reality. That may, in some cases, have to do with the nature of your star. Perhaps you have chosen a goal, a vision, a picture that's not really compatible with who you are. That may be an issue. However, my time is about up for this video. In conclusion, what I want to say is that to give you perspective on getting to know yourself, realize that you are a star and that there are several analogies from observing the stars to observing what happens in human life that apply. One of them is that, yes, there is a class differentiation. There are differences in terms of how much influence, command of resources, and just raw power each individual has. And it's largely determined by what class they're in. But the other thing to remember is that, yes, we are all stars. Yes, we all have the potential to shine to our maximum potential, to be all we can be. However, to get from where we are, and I assume many, if not most of you who are watching this video are not exactly in a place where they want to be, then you need to apply your will. To apply your will, you need to learn techniques. You have to have the self-discipline to apply them or develop it. And you have to remain focused and persevere to the end until that vision is a reality. Thank you for listening. And next time, we will talk a little bit more about getting to know yourself. And then and after that, we will talk about developing a vision. And then the meat of these videos, we'll be talking more about taking action, the how-to end of it, and develop what resources and what we can develop and make available to you to make taking action easier and clearer. I mean, a lot of people, when you say take action, they'll say, oh, well, that's great. What do I do? Well, you don't necessarily want somebody holding your hand every step of the way. You want to take action for yourself. Well, thank you for listening, and I'll be back.